Hello all, and welcome to our panel on Fandom Leads to Fandom. These types of panels are usually called fan history panels, where people who have been around for a while and have seen everything, and have seen everything fail in many, many, many different ways, are here to share their wisdom and perhaps maybe not so much wisdom, but more their anecdotes, perhaps I should say, in the polite company language about what they can share with us. But I would like to start by first introducing these lovely people. First, Joe Ciclari will introduce himself in a minute, but I would like to go through everybody first. Ben Yellow and Bobby Armbruster. I would like to say a few words on everyone, though, just before they actually introduce themselves, because I'm like that. Bobby is fabulous, wondrous, also wonderful. I use the same word again because I'm English as a second language, so I can get away with it. And she has been putting up with me now for a few years, working on cons, and she has seen me at my lows, and she's still speaking with me. So I have to say a lot of thanks to Bobby over there for agreeing to do that for me. And of course, she'll introduce herself in a minute. Ben is, I believe, the elder of the tribe. Is the person people go to, at least
Joe.
I go to.
Joe.
Joe is not the elder of the tribe. Joe is something else entirely. He's the chief, the chieftain, right? You, however, at the age of 20 already, maybe soon you'll be 21, are already an elder. And I think that's something we need to consider. I mean, every time I have a question, who do I go to? I go to you, right? Mm-hmm. How did I find Joe? I found Joe through you. So I just want to acknowledge that for a minute. And you're the fan guest of honor at DisCon, Worldcon this year in DC. And Joe has done so many things in fandom, it was impossible to cut down his bio to 14 words, which is the rules of Icon, because he's just been so active and has done so many things. And running a Worldcon has been just one of them. My condolences. I hope that you survived that and without too many health issues resulting from the stress.
I did okay.
And on that, I would like to turn it over to you, starting with Joe, then Ben, and then Bobby.
Okay. I'm Joe Ciclari. I've been a fan for a long time, since 1965. So I've seen a few things. Been working on conventions since the 70s, although my co-panelists, I think, have been doing it even longer. I was the chair of the 1992 Worldcon, the 50th Worldcon in Orlando. And I run the Fan History Project, which is a project to document and provide information on science fiction fandom. We put publications online. We have publications going back to the first fanzines. And we also have an encyclopedia of fandom, and Fancyclopedia 3. So all of that information is available. We have over 18,000 fanzines of various types.
I truly apologize. Whoa, what just happened? I truly apologize. We have a serious technical difficulty thing, so we're not live. So we're going to have to redo the last 3 minutes. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We were live, we weren't live, it came back. So I'm going to have to ask you all to do it again. I'll try to think about better jokes this time, although I can't promise that I'll succeed.
Okay.
Now you know it's a Fanish convention, right?
I am so sorry. There seems to be a technical issue. We're trying to solve it. Just the streaming for some reason didn't pass on to our website. We're working on it. So you have a few more minutes to just chat, I guess. I'm going to tell you when we're ready.
Okay. Well, we can always fix it in post, Right.
Yep.
No. We're science fiction fans. The answer is you fix it in the paperback.
I'm gonna have to try and recreate that joke in a minute. We'll see. This actually gives me a lot more material to work with so I can bomb.
Well,
A serious question. Are we still scheduled to end on the hour? Because
Yes, it's less than the hour. We're scheduled to end at 45 minutes. We might add a few more minutes if you'll allow us, but it's going to be tight.
Understood. We don't want to step on the next panel.
So we can grab a couple more minutes, but no more than that.
well, whatever it is, yeah, we can cut it short. We can stretch it out.
The good thing we didn't prepare those hour-long video presentations.
Right. Had we prepared those videos, everything would have gone smoothly.
You keep saying that to yourself.
It's the armbruster theory of underwear. If you carry a spare pair of underwear in your carry-on bag, okay, when you fly, they will never lose your luggage.
Well,
we just went live and people heard that. I'm lying. We're not live. But it gives me more material. So sorry, Ben, go ahead.
If you don't check luggage at all, they'll never lose it.
That's true. Hey, but no, gotta have luggage.
No, just look at it this way. The more you prepare, the more there is to go wrong.
It's true.
Absolutely. But no, I learned packing from my mother, who was explaining, pack what you need. It's not like you're going to Mongolia.
But what if? And
well, actually, that did happen to her. The Chinese government sent her to Mongolia as part of that. But as she said, as long as she had her slides, because in those days they were physical slides.
Yeah, these days it's harder to pack because I have to pack for when I feel normal temperature, and then I have to pack things for when I get hot flashes, and I have to pack things for, I have to pack for like 3 different seasons to go on any trip.
Oh, well.
Tell us how you really feel.
The hard part, the hardest case that I had like that was in '85, where I was spending a week in Japan before the Worldcon, where of course that meant hot Japanese summer, the Australian Worldcon winter,
right,
and then back to Texas for the NASPEC. It was 3 weeks on the road, and things weren't computerized quite the way they are now. I had to carry paper files with me.
I know.
Fitting all of that into carry-on was really hard.
Yeah, we got the routine down of when I'd have a conference, I'd have to bring business clothes, but we would usually tack on a vacation.
Okay, we are back. I'm sorry to stop you in the middle of the sentence.
No problem.
I was so excited. Okay, I'm gonna count you in again, and you can start over. I am so sorry again. You can obviously take a few more minutes if you need. Gadi, you know the drill, so I'm not gonna have to explain it. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. We are live.
And of course, then you had to carry your underwear with you, right?
Yes.
So, and then what happens then?
The plane landed, and my baggage was there on the carousel.
So hello, everybody. We have been sharing stories of things and thingies and thingies and things. We're sorry about the technical difficulty. Well, we're not really feeling sorry, but it's the polite thing to say, right? We've had wonderful conversations without you, but now we can bring you in. We have 3 luminaries today. I believe that's the right word. I'm learning new things here, buddy, in fandom. And they're going to talk to us about fandom, how fandom evolves, interesting stories. And I'm sure I asked Ben to tell a story, and I don't remember what it was, but it was 5 minutes ago. I'm getting old, Bobby.
Yes, you are.
Yes. Anyway, we have Joe Ciclari, who will introduce himself in a second. He's done more things in fandom than I can count. We have Ben, who is the fan guest of honor in Worldcon this year. That means he's been around. It's done. How many Worldcons have you worked at the DH level, Ben?
DH chairman staff level, about 20.
About 20. And we have Bobby, who essentially holds all of the conventions together because she is the timeline mistress, time lady as well, whatever. She's amazing. She's put up with me through many conventions. And honestly, I don't know how she's done that. So let's get started. Joe, tell us about yourself. I'm gonna up the speed of the panel though.
Okay, I'm Joe Ciclari. I've been a fan for a long time. It's about 55 to 56 years now. And my current big thing is to work on the Fan History Project. This project documents science fiction fandom by putting up all the old fanzines that we can. We have 18,000 plus already online, and we're adding more every week. We have a fan encyclopedia, in which we have all kinds of additional documentation in history. My past background is working on conventions and doing fanzines. I haven't worked as many conventions as Ben or probably Bobby, but I have worked a couple of hundred of them. And I was the chairman of the 1992 Worldcon in Orlando, MagicCon, which was the 50th Worldcon. Let me let everybody else introduce themselves.
Ben?
As Gotti mentioned, I'm Ben Yallow. I'm the fan guest of honor this year at the Worldcon, which will be the 50th anniversary of my first Worldcon. And it will, I haven't missed any since I first went to my first Worldcon in '71. I've worked on hundreds of conventions. I've worked on many, many dozens of Worldcons, ranging from, being a gopher up through chairman's staff or a division head. And I'm a member of clubs around the country and actually around the world. I've been a division head on multiple countries. So I continue to look forward to working on them and continuing to work with my fellow panelists.
Thank you, Ben. And now to the fabulous Bobby.
Thank you, Gabby. I entered fandom in the early 70s and worked my first convention. My first convention to work on was the 1976 WesterCon, where I did programming. And I must tell you, I have the deepest respect for any fan who is brave enough to work, to put a program together for any convention. I respect you highly. It is a hard, tough job.
I will tell you and cut you off there that the person who is doing the screening for us right now, the tech person on the call, Ronnie, she's actually the person who built the program for Icon this year. And she's the head of marketing for the... She is a goddess. And she's also the head of marketing for the bid for Israel in 2027. So
that's wonderful.
She can't really speak right now to you because she's working, but she's saying thank you.
You're welcome. And somehow I have managed to, over the years, work every position in Worldcon except for tech. Okay, I have not worked in any technical position because usually I am asked to leave the room when technical equipment is operating because I cause sparks, apparently. For the past several years, since for 5 years now, I have stepped back from doing division head work. I am in my mid-70s now, and I have taken on the task of doing timelines for WorldCons, and hopefully being able to put together and structure a template, timeline template for future WorldCons. Hopefully I'll have it ready for you, Gaddy.
You better. You're on staff after all. But I remember, so we have people here who started SMOFCon. SMOFCon is a convention for people. So science fiction is meta. Science fiction conventions are meta-meta. A convention for people who run science fiction conventions are meta-meta-meta, right? And SMOFCon is a convention for people who run science fiction conventions, started by people in this very virtual room. And you can talk about it if you like. I remember I was in SMOFCon in 2007 in Boston. And somebody said, join us in this program. I'm like, what's going on? And they dragged me into a room, and it was about global fandom. And they asked me to tell a little bit about the history of Israeli fandom. Naturally, I'm not an expert on it, but I managed to say that we have our society, which is more of a literary organization. We had our Star Trek people, which has slowly died down over time. Maybe they'll come back now that there's all Star Trek in the air. We have the Tolkien people who argue over the smallest typo in the translation to understand Tolkien better, and they're wonderful. And we've had schisms, and we have had come to Jesus moment, and people coming together and doing cons together, and we've had all these different things. And then the Buffy club came out of that, and we have the anime people who kind of did their own thing, but also we have our own people involved. And it seems like all these fandoms kind of are, if not the same people, very, very close. Many times the same people, and we keep founding new fandoms. And it seems like the process is very similar around the world, across the globe, really. And I just wonder, is this the same way all over the world? Who wants to jump in on this?
You know,
Oh, sure. Anybody can. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, you mentioned anime, okay? And I think that's an absolutely perfect example. I can remember back in the day, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, and Fred Patton, a big name fan in Los Angeles, he was a proselytizer of anime. He brought anime to Los Angeles fandom, okay? And it was with Los Angeles conventions. It was the first time in any science fiction convention I'd seen an anime program. And then I started seeing them pop up all over conventions. And all of a sudden there was an anime fandom, and all of a sudden it was out in the world, and there were all these young people with anime. And it's been a pleasure to watch that grow.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Fred. He even before that, Fred was in fact, very, very active in comics fandom. And in several other fandoms, which in the US, a lot of fandoms started in the 1960s. And Fred was involved in a number of those. A number of them started, for example, mystery fandom pretty much started out of the Los Angeles area with Fred as a participant, but with Bruce Pells and the Moffats. And they started BoucherCon, which is pretty much credited with the really beginning of mystery fandom. But there were fandoms before that. There was Edgar Rice Burroughs fandom. There was actually a Tolkien fandom, Tolkien societies with Ed Meshke's founding that one. And so fandoms, what people do is they just get really interested in one particular subject, and they do a publication on it, they do a convention on it, they do some programs at conventions, and they find similar people.
There's also the question, what we tend to see is some fandoms stay merged. as well as having their own conventions, but they very much are part of most non-specialized conventions. Other conventions, other fandoms tend to split off, and while they may have a small presence, you don't have much of a mystery fandom split off, and they run their own conventions, and there isn't a lot of mystery programming at a regular science fiction convention. There is going to be a moderate amount of comics or quite possibly anime or things like that, which have their own conventions in addition to being a part of the more straight line derived from the original conventions, science fiction conventions. So some things split off, some things stay very much integrated, as well as, of course, having their own conventions.
Yeah, I think gaming is a good example of that.
Right.
Okay.
Gaming. And I mean, the big case of splitting off, in a sense, came from the media conventions.
Yeah.
Essentially, when the first specialized Star Trek convention, which at the time, you looked at the 1972 Star Trek convention, which was twice the size of the Worldcon, even though everybody had thought of it when it was first being discussed as sort of a spin-off from Lunacon, which was the New York area mainstream convention. And people were saying, well, maybe we'll get a third of the number of people who would go to Lunacon, because it's mostly a science fiction convention for people who want more Star Trek program than would feel comfortable at Lunacon, so it'll be smaller than Lunacon instead of being over 3,000 people, which made it bigger than the Worldcon that year. But that was really quite a breakthrough. It also was a huge demographic change.
Yeah.
Because Star Trek fandom was mostly, certainly not exclusively, but Star Trek fandom was mostly female. Science fiction fandom in the 60s leading up to the 70s, when we started talking about the Trek cons, was mostly 70-80% male. But what this meant was that there was a huge influx, so that modern world cons are probably, I won't say they're 50-50, but they're probably within a few percentage points of that.
So is Worldcon, this is for you, Joe, is Worldcon the birthplace of fandoms?
No. Fandom started out 10 years before the first
fandoms. Fandoms, plural, new fandoms.
No,
well, new fandoms is different, but the old style fandom started out back in 1930 and even a little bit before that. But that was mostly with fanzines. But the new fandoms that came out actually started a little bit in the 50s with comics, particularly comics fanzines that were starting to come out to focus on what was in the US, EC comics. By the 60s, there were several major science fiction fans who were moving more into comics fandom, and it's usually considered having started around 63, 64 with a burst out of our other fandom. But from that point on, there were various groups that were realizing that there was enough groups, enough people to focus their own conventions or their own publications. Not that they all split off. A lot of them stayed active. I mean, I mentioned the Moffats a moment ago about mystery fandom, but they stayed very, very active in *SFSFS and in many other things, Worldcon fandom. Even while they were doing the mystery things. They just had another channel for which they focused a lot of effort. Ben and I and Bobby have been working on conventions for almost forever, it seems like. But in 1983, when I broached the subject of SMOFCon to Ben, SMOFCon was a convention to give people a little more information about running conventions. And it's still running. We never thought it would last more than a couple of years, if it would even go on past the first one. And now it's moving around the world.
In fact, the hard part was when SMOFCon 2 failed, because there was a SMOFCon 2 announced, and it didn't do an aggressive enough publicity job. And so at a month before the convention, when about 2 people outside the committee had actually bought memberships, the convention committee folded it. Although I went anyhow because I had a non-refundable plane ticket.
So just for the, so you had a vacation. So just for the people joining.
It was SMOFCon.
Just a few friends meeting for beer.
I went to the location. I stayed on a couch on the chairman's.
Lawrence of Arabia, going for the Turk general.
And I went to the function space where it was going to be held. I attended SMOFCon 2.
So for the Israelis who are admiring Ben going to attend the convention almost by himself, a committee is essentially the management of the convention, and the conventions outside of Israel have memberships. You pay one fee for a ticket and you're in, when in Israel we pay per event or per program item. Bobby, you wanted to say something?
No, I was, Ben made my point. It was fine.
Well, oh, wow. I would never give up the chance to speak, but that's okay.
Well, in that case, I was going to take things in the direction of, you say, when did the fandoms start? And it, from my experience, and I think I'm the newest fan here by a couple of years. Okay, what I watched was my local group was large enough. My local group is the Los Angeles Science Fantasy Society, LOSFAS, was large enough that there were enough people that had enough different interests that all of those interests, those people found each other. Okay, and started using the tools that were available to other science fiction fans. They started publishing their own fanzines. Okay, and they started communicating with people that were interested in what they were interested in other parts of the country. And then because they had worked on science fiction conventions, let's have a convention of our own. And Gallifrey started. Okay, the Doctor Who convention. You get 4 people together, 2 of them have an interest in common, and you'll start a convention. Okay.
I'm sure you can start a convention about anything. When I lived in Florida, we started a convention called the Traveling Fete, which was designed around a banquet and a guest visiting the guest of honor. We took the convention to the guest of honor and told him that he had to run the convention. And the guest of honor came up. It was mostly a relaxicon, but the guest of honor was required to do the program. He had to give a talk, and he had to take us to his favorite tourist spot where he lived.
That is hostile action right there. That's an invasion force.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Well,
we moved around to wherever the guest picked. And it worked. It was a great fun.
right. But as Bobby was talking, you know, we had mentioned VoucherCon. VoucherCon was started, the co-chairs of the first VoucherCon were Bruce Pelz and Chuck Crane. Bruce Pelz and Chuck Crane were also the chairs of the Los Angeles WorldCon 2 years later. And Bruce chaired VoucherCon 2, and then the Moffats chaired VoucherCon 3. I mean, basically, this was the Lostas in action. This was Bruce Pelz in action. I think it is safe to say that most modern con runners owe a huge debt to Bruce Pelz. He, in a sense, is arguably the most important fan since the founding generation in terms of con running and really bringing so many bit of everything.
Yeah, he was the ultimate multi-fan experience. Okay, he was a science fiction fan. He was a book dealer. He was a master costumer. He was a gamer. Okay, he was just about everything you could think of in fandom. He participated in that fandom. So yeah, I think generally most of us have more than one interest. Okay, my major.
So we're getting a question here about the average age of WorldCons. For example, in Israel, we have some older people in the community, but generally the average age is young. We have a lot of kids coming in, thousands of kids. We have some programming which is not necessarily seen at the WorldCon. For example, we have the Ring, where they go in and they practice with role-playing and swords and all of that stuff. We have a lot of activities, and WorldCon is different, and a lot of different fandoms are different. Can you maybe talk a little bit about the age of the community and different fandoms and how that all works together and meshes together?
It's really different in different places. I think for a while we were worried about the aging of fandom because there was not a lot of new people coming in as far as running conventions. But these days there's more people who have started doing things. But as far as attending conventions, I think you're finding them from all kinds of ages. Any WorldCon is going to have lots of young people coming because science fiction is now a cultural phenomenon. And although we're not focusing always on the media, which is the most popular part of it, WorldCon does cover everything. And if you look, when the convention was in Ireland a couple of years ago, I think half of the convention was fairly young. Now you get the old timers like us, but we've been around for a long time. We keep going as long as we can, but just by natural selection, our percentage is going down quite a bit.
What tends to happen is that the locals are generally younger at a WorldCon than the average group, because basically, in many cases, you go to your first WorldCon or your first convention and say, I think I'll go back to more of these. And you may keep going for years, you may keep going for decades. For locals, for a lot of them, it's their first WorldCon, or in many cases, even their first convention. So they tend to be younger because if you're 40 or 50 or 60, you've already got your ingrained habits. You're more likely to go to your first convention when you're a teenager or in your 20s, or younger in some cases.
So I'm going to pick up on that point specifically. Bobby, as a teenager, would you mind sharing with us how many fandoms you've managed to roll through and how that happened?
Not a teenager. I'm a grandma. Thank you very much. I rolled through fanzine fandom, okay, specifically APA fandom. That is Amateur Press Association.
Appa for me is a character from Avatar: The Last Airbender, and he's my spirit animal.
Nope. Amateur Press Association, sorry.
And Bobby also appeared on the cover of one of these appas in costume.
It's true. It's true. I marginally did costume fandom with Margie Ellers, God bless her soul. Convention fandom is what my main interest is, and it gave me a career, by the way. Let us not poo-poo volunteering in science fiction fandom, because you can make money out of it. You can direct your life with it. So that's what it did for me.
I wonder, Joe, what usually happens in panels like this? What are the topics of discussion when people talk about fan history and cross-pollination?
Well, it depends on the kind of history you're talking about. I mean, you can talk about, some of the old things that are going on, but when you're trying to talk about a cross-pollination, not even so much cross-pollination, but looking at the way fandoms grow is pretty much similar. To give you an idea, German fandom, which or European fandom, started because a couple of fans from the US, their father got stationed from Texas to Europe, and moved into several places in Europe, in Belgium, Germany, and I can't remember where the third place was. And they started corresponding with some fans. These are Greg and Jim Benford. Greg became a professional writer, but he's still a fan who attends both conventions, contributes to fanzines, and in fact, I was on a Zoom program that he attended yesterday on fan history. And he assisted in putting together one of the first Eurocons, I believe it was, or maybe it was just a local convention that was put on mainland Europe. And that started a growing fandom over there. Some of those people had already appeared in fanzines, but that's what got them doing conventions. And they got in touch with a couple of British fans, and where conventions had been going for years, and they started one in Europe.
There's a lot of interest right now in Israel about when, instead of if, we bring Worldcon to Israel in 2027. How is that going to affect our fandom? What can we expect before, during, and after, maybe even specifically after Worldcon coming to Israel?
Well, the first thing has got to be before, because you really have to get involved if you want people to vote for you. And Worldcons are done with a site selection that happens years before the convention itself. You really need to be out there and mixing with the people who are running conventions between now and when you want to do it, and both getting experience and what I call planting ops. You plant obligations by learning and helping other people. And then when you ask them to help you, you've planted an obligation. They really need to try to help you.
That a little bit.
What I would also say is that it is really vital not only to be out there collecting obs, but it's also vital. Everybody will make mistakes. Ideally, it helps if it's the other guy who makes the mistakes, so you get to learn from the other person's mistakes. You're going to make some. You're going to make some, absolutely. My perhaps dubious claim to fame is that I think I've probably made more mistakes running conventions than anybody else in the history of the field.
Yeah, probably.
I try hard, however, to learn from the mistakes that other people make, which means that the easiest way to learn that is to work on other people's conventions. I've learned things from Bobby and Joe. Absolutely. Both of them have contributed enormously to what I would think of as my skill set. That's the way you learn. The thing to avoid is somebody walked out of a convention committee meeting. It was a bid committee meeting. And their comment was, I don't mind the long arguments about reinventing the wheel. I mind the fact that the argument is whether it has 3 sides or 4. You really don't want to reinvent the wheel. We've spent almost a century since the first convention in 1936. So we're looking at 85 years. We've spent a long time developing a bag of tricks. Now, things that were applicable in 1936 are not necessarily completely applicable right now.
Yeah.
So yes, the bag of tricks is constantly changing.
So we now have 3 minutes left. So I'd like to go a little bit faster if that's okay. Bobby.
Let me say one thing. If you, for those who want to work on conventions and work on WorldCons, I no longer have anything at all to do with it, but they should start going to some SMOFCons. The current one is supposed to be in a couple of months in Lisbon. So it's at least a bit closer than when it's usually in the US.
All right, so I'll throw some questions out there, and whoever wants to pick it up will pick it up. I'll start with, let's call it an association game for the 3 minutes we have left. Peanut butter is not a costume. Who's gonna pick that one up?
LA
Bobby.
72.
Okay, and
Quickly.
I was married to the man who was standing behind the peanut butter man. And that was Ron Bounds and Jerry Jacks as Farford and the Gay Mouser. And there was Ron Bounds in a fur suit, okay, as a barbarian, when by the time he got on stage, he was covered in peanut butter. Go ahead.
And he smelled bad.
Oh, yes.
He went rancid.
I understand that the convention had to pay a lot of money to fix the plumbing of the hotel after he took a shower.
It was really bad. The only thing that made me feel better was hearing that he had to have his friends try and scrub him down with scouring powder to try and get the smell out because it had soaked into his skin. It didn't work, but at least he was in pain.
Moving on. So how many objections were there for Star Trek content to be shown at the WorldCon when it just came out?
There wasn't any.
Star Trek premiered at the WorldCon.
Fun.
Long before it appeared on TV,
Absolutely.
It premiered at a World
So what did the Worldcon community object to? Buffy? Anime?
No, they
No,
didn't.
not any of them.
No.
The first big Star Wars panel, for example, was in 1976 at the Worldcon.
Craig
The
Miller.
video for it is
No,
online.
this was before Craig got involved.
Ah, okay.
Basically, you had Mark Hamill standing outside a room and basically tackling anybody who came within 30 feet of him, saying, I've got this really cool new movie. Come see all my great props.
So we
That
have
was
zero
cool.
time left, but it is cool. Worldcon is cool. I think that the most important thing about this session here is that we managed to give people, or you, thankfully, not me, managed to give people a little bit of a taste of what it means to be a part of a wider fandom, that we're all geeks, we're all fans, and it's bigger than just us, and it's all the same, and we all have the same jokes and the same problems. And I just want to say thank you. Bobby, you're as awesome as always. Thank you for holding my hand throughout the last few years with many conventions. Ben, I don't care if you're 100, you're going to be staff for the second Israeli Worldcon in 2040 or something. And Joe, it's a pleasure to meet you, as we have never met before.
Nice meeting you, and thanks for having me on the panel.
Thank you for coming, Ben. Thank you, and Bobby, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye all.